Good morning, everybody. My name is Deborah Byrne from DBpsychology Services, known across social media, DBpsychology. And today I'm going to talk about this week's blog, which is all about hoarding disorder. Now, I like to do these blogs because I want to give people information and give them some practical advice about how they can help themselves or help a loved one. And even just knowing that this disorder exists can do that, and to know that you're not alone and that there is help available. So that's what I hope from talking about these types of blogs. So hoarding disorder. Basically, it is not about being a clutterer or just collecting things. It's a different type of thing altogether. It is. It's not about collection. So people might think that this is about their child who has all these collections, or somebody that they know has all these collections. It is not about that. Collections tend to be very organized. They tend to be very easily accessible, and they tend to be about one thing or a couple of things. So you might have somebody who collects memorabilia. They might collect, the typical kids thing, like trading cards, for their sports team or something like that. Or something. Sometimes it can be something that you mightn't get what it is about, but they know what it's about and they can talk about it, and they'll be able to show it to you, and it'll be it'll be organized very nicely. With somebody with a hoarding disorder, totally different level altogether. It probably be a lot of random items, a combination of things. There'll be no organization on it. Things will be very, haphazardly put around the house, and it can, as we all, we may believe somebody who is a hoarder is the image of, everything everywhere. It's all random. You cannot access the kitchen. You can't access bathrooms. You can't access sitting rooms or bedrooms. It's just everywhere. Yes, it can get to that level. And for the person with a hoarding disorder, to actually get rid of an item is extremely difficult. It will cause a very adverse reaction in that person. It's painful for them to get rid of that. They need these things for whatever reason in their own head. They need these things. It's an unmanageable clutter that has built up within their homes. So in saying that, they sometimes don't realize that they have a problem. Now they may do, and that can bring an awful lot of shame and guilt for that person. But most of the time, particularly early on, they may not know that they have this condition, this hoarding disorder. They may not even understand what it is or why they're doing it. There may have been a trigger in the past, but they may not know now why they are doing this. I have to say one thing: if it is left untreated, hoarding disorder will only become worse. And then you get the situation where, we've all seen it in TV shows and films, where somebody walks into a house and there's just clutter everywhere, piles of newspapers and magazines and plastic bags and rubbish everywhere all over the home. Very hard to get through the front door, that sort of thing. That's extreme. But it can get that bad if it is left untreated. It is a hard disorder to treat, but it is treatable. Okay, it is treatable. Now, I've listed out the symptoms and I've listed out typical types of items that people can collect, but they can collect anything. They will, and probably not just, unlike collections, it won't be just one, there won't be a theme on it. It'll be there could be multiple themes or a completely unrecognizable theme. So you've got to bear that in mind. It's slightly different than somebody who doesn't like to throw away things, or somebody who is a collector. So the way it's treated is basically with cognitive behavioural therapy, and in some cases antidepressants. And why we say that is because there can be underlying conditions which will need to be treated first before you can treat the hoarding disorder. So underlying conditions can be something like dementia, which might be surprising for some people, and disabilities. A disability can trigger a hoarding disorder. OCD, probably that is the one most people would think about. If somebody had a hoarding disorder, they might think of OCD. Anxiety, depression, psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia, and if there is a family history of hoarding disorder or some sort of, that kind of neglect, or even the death of a loved one can trigger this condition, this hoarding disorder to be triggered. Now, in saying all that, that there could be underlying mental health issues, in saying all that, it can be just a condition in itself. But just be aware that, it is a harder disorder to help. It takes time to, in fact, treat the person. And so if you are somebody who is living with this person, or it is a loved one, maybe you're not living with them, maybe you just know somebody who has this condition, you have to be very patient. You have to just encourage them to seek help, because as I said, it is treatable, but they may not realize they have the condition. So getting help is important. You have to be very sensitive to this situation. Remember, as I said at the start, they're not going to want to throw away these items. It's almost painful for them. It's almost physically painful for them to do this. It isn't a case of, right, I'll come in and I'm going to declutter your house. I'm just going to sort it out for you. That just will not work. It'll just build up again. They have to get treatment. In fact, the treatment by the therapist usually involves home visits, where, the therapist will go in during those home visits and they will discuss what's being kept, what those items are, and persuade the person, is it time to let this go, and encourage the person to let something go. They won't do it very quickly, and they, as I said, they may need treatment for the other conditions such as OCD. There may be, as I said, maybe it's dementia, maybe it's the start of dementia. And sometimes we don't recognize that somebody has dementia. But then we see things being built up, and it's a case with dementia and somebody with a disability. Usually in that case, they need extra help. They're still capable of living at home. They're still capable of independent living, but they need extra help. And maybe it's just everything has gotten on top of them. But if it's causing a really strong emotional reaction for things to be decluttered for their home, then it has become a hoarding disorder, and that needs a qualified therapist, somebody who specialises or has, extensive knowledge of hoarding disorder and how to treat it. It's not just any therapist that can treat this. That's very, very important. And it's very important, I can't stress that enough, to understand and to help the person that has this condition to understand why they're doing it, what triggered it. So therefore then they can work through that. They can work through their anxiety. As I said, antidepressants are usually required, and that will also help with their anxiety around around letting things go. It's safety and security. Think this is what it's their safety and security. Think about this, guys. Why are they doing it? Why do they need to hold on to these things? All these things need to be investigated by a properly qualified therapist. So you, as their loved one, really needs to have a non-judgmental approach, be very sensitive to the condition itself, and to reassure them, support them and reassure them that nobody will take any of this away, that they need the help. Let the therapist work with them. Let the therapist work with that person to then declutter the house, to bring it down to a manageable size. You will probably find that this person will always have some form of clutter in their lives. Maybe not to the extent that it's, the house has become unmanageable, but they will need a little bit just to keep, that feeling of safety and security in their lives. So that is hoarding disorder. I know this is the type of year that, the time of year that everybody starts to declutter. I'm decluttering at the moment. And if you've seen the room behind me, you'd be shocked, because I have bags and bags of stuff everywhere, ready to go to the charity shops. But we all do that. We all build up things that we don't want or don't need. We think we need them at the time. So, think about your own clutter at this time of the year, and maybe it's time that you can let your own things go and see how that feels for you. Maybe you can put yourself in the other person's shoes and see, what would it be like if I let go of, and think of the items that you have. And we all have too much. So, think about passing them on somebody else. If you give them to the charity shops, think about giving them to the refuges, particularly if you've been holding on to toys or clothes, children's clothes, things like that, or ladies' clothes. A lot of the refuges at this time of year in particular get a lot of donations, and they would be very grateful. They're always looking for items, and the charity shops, of course, are always looking for items, and somebody will get the benefit. In fact, it'll be a double benefit, because the charity will have money and the person that receives the item will have the benefit of that item. So think about that. Think about putting yourself in that person's shoes, and understand that items that we own and possess, and little things, even pieces of paper that our child has drawn on in the past, it's all emotional. It's all about the memories. So if you can think about that, you can then start to put yourself into the position of your loved one who maybe has this hoarding disorder. So I will leave it at that, and I will see you all next week. I think I'm doing a parenting blog next week on children and anxiety. So I'll talk to you all next week, and thank you all for listening again. Thank you to Jennifer and Deirdre, who are brilliant at listening in every week at this time, and Colette as well. So thank you and good morning.